Hello, our loyal listeners. We're back here with Sports Break Nation. I'm Javier. I'm going to be leading the discussion tonight about whether college athletes should get paid. And here with me, I have the lovely company of
Sarah Lynn,
Evan,
and Megan.
Cynthia.
Cynthia's on the phone once again. But since we already know that it went really well last time, I don't think that's going to be an issue. So let's kickstart this. There's an evident problem where college athletes break some laws, break some rules, and there's a discussion of whether the athletes are the ones that should be punished or the rules need to be changed. So let's start with that. What do you guys think about it? Like, specifically, there's an issue with the rules that are already established that you think that you need to be changed, controlled, altered, some additions?
So wait, when you say college athletes, maybe we should specify in general or in NCAA?
I would like to focus on NCAA because if we're focusing on different systems, this might get out of control a little bit. So, anything we want to focus on?
Well, I don't know, like, it might be good just to kind of say that for me personally, I think that, rules are there for a reason, and they have to be respected. I mean, you're entering a contract, basically, and when you're playing any type of sport, so you need to be able to abide by them, and they're not guidelines. They're there for a reason. They have penalties. Athletes need to be aware of them. It's like any other situation. You have rules in the workplace. You have rules in school. They're not above that.
Right, but under that framework, rules in which that keeps them from earning money, which they create, because since most of the athletes are the entertainers, and that organizations earn millions of dollars, it's genuinely unfair. For example, there's allegations of some athletes that where their scholarships do not cover an extended meal plan, and they actually go bed hungry. Those are the athletes that are making the organizations earn money. There's some violations that include like $140 of meals and get a fine because of that. So I agree with the fact that rules are there to be respected, but those rules were established when athletes were keeping themselves from earning a small percentage of whether it will be able to earn right now. So since times are changing, numbers are changing, maybe the rules should be changing.
But they have been changing. It's not like we have the same type of rules that we've had in the 1960s, especially when you're talking about the NCAA. Yearly they are reviewed, yearly they are talked about, and some of them change. The problem is, it's not so much the rules, it's whether the NCAA should be considered professional or amateur sport. That is the debate, right? The rules will be based off of whether NCAA is professional or amateur. It can't be both, which is where we're kind of in the middle of today. So the real discussion is whether it should be professional or should be amateur, in my opinion.
If they keep themselves from, if they decide to be amateurs, if they choose to be professional, they will be losing the antitrust clause that they hold right now that allows them to be able to have the benefits they have, right? So, but by going professional and allowing themselves to enter in the free market, they will even improve the product. So,
do you mean for like the NCAA to be professional?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think for myself, it's a touchy subject. It's so catch and go on whether or not you think college athletes should get paid. I mean, you look at the amount of money that's being brought in by, in particular sports per se. I mean, you look at the NCAA and there's, two primary big sports, and that's basketball and football is the big money maker. And, I mean, when you look at the amount of money that's generated from, or the amount of revenue that's been generated from these programs, and a lot of it coming from the notoriety and the commitment of players, like, it's hard not to see why they shouldn't be getting paid. But at the same time, too, when you look at it from a business standpoint in the NCAA, I mean, you look at it as like free labor in a way that, we can make all this money and, we can sell it as we're giving kids scholarships and we're giving them an education, which is fair. But, I mean, I was reading an article today that compared athletes to like non-students, and it was saying that on average the students had a lower GPA because of like time commitments, and that was their main like reason for it. And I think there's a certain amount of time that an athlete's allowed to commit themselves towards sport. I think it's 20 hours a week. I'm pretty positive that's what it is. But they're saying that a lot of times the athlete might go over that, but they just won't report it, is the thing. So,
well, if you think about it, 20 hours a week, that's a lot of time. But I mean, if you look at a schedule of a varsity athlete, even here, so not the NCAA, which I'm sure their schedules are even much heavier in sports, but athletes for some teams will practice every day. So sometimes they have to get there an hour before, do their tape jobs, do whatever they have to do to get ready. They have, a 2-hour practice, and then they, if that's every day, how many hours is that a week? And then they have, their whole weekends are filled with games. Maybe they're on the road. Maybe they're gone all weekend. Like, they easily go over that dumb 20-hour rule. Like, I mean, I don't even think any teams could do under 20 hours, actually.
Yeah, and what fits into that 20 hours? Like, is it just practice time and games, or is it like traveling and like getting to
but that's
working out?
That's the thing then, is if you feel like they need to spend more time being committed to their sport, then they're not necessarily there to go to school.
Right.
Well, that's an interesting question, but considering that Mark Emmert he's the chairman of the NCAA. I think that's the title, chairman.
Yeah.
What's the word? He holds that the student athletes have a better graduation record than the regular athletes. I mean regular students. That's one point. And you mentioned the business point, but these rules of keeping them from earning money is damaging the product of the NCAA because it's driving players away. So
where are the players going to go?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to European leagues. They're going to Asian leagues.
But if
Emmanuel Mundier is already playing, and he's not going to be the first one, the last one.
But look at what's their major money making sport?
Sponsors, yeah.
No. What's the sport that is most popular? What's the one that generates the most revenue?
Where?
In the NCAA.
Football.
Where else are those football players going to go to play?
Well, we're discussing two major sports, but football, that might not be an issue.
Yeah.
But in basketball specifically, the product is being damaged right now. With these one and dones, with this exporting players are going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the focus here is not what the university gives the students. Of course, a career is important, education is important, but it's what they're not earning. It's the issue. It's not what they're getting; it's what they should earn.
Yeah.
Right. So the contracts that could be signing, it's in the millions, and the NCAA in 2012 had a revenue of $840 million, something similar. You're going to tell me there's not a way to balance that? There should be a way.
I mean, there's been discussions about giving players like not a salary, but like
But that's a band-aid,
it's a Band-Aid issue if you get like something like $100 a week or something like that to
like a stipend
to cover like
Parking.
well, groceries, just general expenses, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, when you look at some of the examples that you brought up earlier of people getting in trouble with the NCAA, I mean, they're over like I remember there was one with football players in Ohio State. Terrell Pryor was the most notable one, where he got a tattoo for free because he said he would promote this guy's tattoo shop, and the NCAA suspended him from his last year because he was using his notoriety as a football player to get something out of it. And like that's the kind of stuff to me where I'm like, it has nothing to do with
the sport.
I don't see tattoos being like a bad
But
thing.
it does, because you have specified partnerships. They go through, the NCAA will only partner with certain people. They only have certain sponsors. So when one person goes against that, then what's the big deal if Nike has done all of these different things and has gone through all of these different steps to become a partner, become a sponsor of the NCAA, while a tattoo parlor shop can do it by giving a free guy a tattoo. There's the level, and even like as a business, I mean, it does create problems, and that's why they do have that penalty because of that. Because again, if Nike can just go and say, hey, like, I'll give you free stuff, you go sponsor me while you're in the NCAA, breaks down the system. And then you wouldn't see the NCAA be able to have that type of income coming in, and you probably wouldn't see it as being as popular because it's built up from those sponsorships.
Yeah, but you need to consider that under the current system, these corporations, organizations, businesses are keeping the money to themselves instead of giving it to young men that are creating the business all around it.
But they're not, because if you go into the NCAA website, they actually provide the money that all the sponsorships come from the NCAA funding. So the money that they get through the NCAA as a corporation gets refunded to provide the scholarships. Right? So, yeah, okay, it's not a big portion. I'm not going to lie. I'm not saying any of that stuff. But it is going back into the system. It's not $800 million I'm keeping to myself as a corporation. Some of it is getting filtered back in.
Yeah, some of it, and it's redistributed.
Yeah, some of it, not all of it. But you can't say that it's not at all.
No, I'm not saying it's
because
not
they
at
are
all.
providing the scholarships for those kids to come and play and giving them an education. Harvard, Yale, all of those people have $150,000 for like 2 years of education. That's like, okay, I'm at, for student loan, not even a quarter, like 3/4 of that yet. And that's for 6 years of studying in Canada.
But who decides how those resources are redistributed or are allocated? And it's the NCAA, right?
What do you mean?
What I mean, like, so there's 800 million in revenues, and you said they're being reinvested in scholarships. How are those millions redistributed back into the system? Who decides how that happens?
Well, they have to provide a certain amount of scholarships depending on your Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 leagues. Each team is able to get, I think, depending on the sport, like hockey, for example, is allowed to get 17 full scholarships. The coaches determine how much money is given to each player. So you might get 17 players with full ride scholarships, and the other 5 might not get any. Or you might get some with partial scholarships, or whatever the case is. But that money does get filtered down. They set out a certain amount of money each year to be provided to those scholarships, and it's been increasing steadily so that they can encourage more athletes to go into the NCAA. it's not like they don't help fund, the tournaments or even like help rebuild infrastructure. And there are other things that they do to make it more of a secure field. It's not. I just gave you $100 million for scholarships, and now I have 700 million, whatever we're talking about, left. I'm just going to keep it to myself and put it in my bank, right?
Yeah, but all that is possible because of the players, who are the ones that are not seeing anything but that scholarship and that education that you
But
mentioned.
a free ride scholarship, and
you make it
great
sound like there's
education, and this and that, and then also being able to be on a bigger stage where they can be scouted for professional sport as well.
they already got that when they were in high school, and they will still get some kind of that in different leagues, especially in the basketball scenario. Again, and some of these players might not even use this said education for their future. Actually, the basketball career would be enough for them. And don't forget that actually some of these programs allow a lot of no-show benefits in the schooling part, in the academic part. So it's not that the education is not important. It's just that they're still not getting the fair value of what they're providing to the system.
And in some cases, I find, especially in some schools, like GPAs are like ridiculously low to maintain academic eligibility at some of these schools. Like, I remember reading something in out of LSU when they were making their championship run in football a couple years ago, where one of their quarterbacks, it was their backup quarterback at the time, had a low GPA. He had like a 1.5 GPA, and he was ineligible, and then somehow mysteriously ended up with a 2.0 GPA in time for the national championship game in order to remain eligible. And I've heard of majors in like what was one of the funny ones? I don't know. There's some fishy majors that some athletes get out of their in their education, that it would just I doubt whether or not education is the most important thing for a lot of these students. And I think
no, but okay, that's not the NCAA's fault. Like, it's not their responsibility to make sure each athlete is getting a proper education and doing this and doing that. That goes to the school. And yes, they're governed by the NCAA, but you can't, you're getting into much more technical things per university, right? Like,
but should it not be on the NCAA
really
to encourage academic excellence, if that's what they're preaching, rather than...
Yeah, but it's the same thing in the CIS too.
Yeah.
Like, you can't say it's just the
I'm
NCAA.
not saying that the NCAA is the only one for it. I think that there's certain.
No.
I think that there's certain CIS
has
programs.
Quite a few circumstances where that's happening as well.
Yeah. I think
Right.
that there's things happening in the CIS where you see programs like that, but like in the NCAA and the CIS, there's also programs that do champion academic excellence, and the fact that there's only like few cases of that is just, I don't know. I find it that the NCAA and the CIS should take more responsibility on that to encourage that, rather than encourage professionalization of sport when they're telling everybody that they're an amateur sport. Does that make sense? No?
Yeah, obviously they have to decide what they're going to do. It's not like, again, it goes back to the issue: should it be recognized as being professional sport, or should it stay amateur? There is no win-win right now, what I mean. But it's coming to a point in time where sport in general, it costs money I
Yeah.
mean, you see it in the CIS. How many times does, what a university puts in doesn't necessarily help, it doesn't cover the complete cost. And then you see, the teams being cut and things like that. They need to be able to thrive to provide, enough money to support the teams. And in keeping it amateur, are you really going to be able to do that?
That's why the direction we need, we all agree that some changes need to be done. The question is what changes? And I think that in the NCAA specifically, they should be driving towards a free market. That will actually help them in these different aspects. Especially like some programs that cannot cover their expenses right now should be able to, or will be able to work to work around it. Like you're not going to tell me that universities that actually find a way to have professors and different programs being put on campus and a university without bankruptcy cannot do the same thing, because now the factors are not regular students but student athletes and coaches and sports programs. They already know how to do this, and they need to actually find programs and build programs that will work with their current budget. So
I think I don't know, one of the things that stands out to me is that if you look at in some sports, you look at the salaries that coaches make off of it, and the money they get is up in the millions of dollars to coach these kids, and
Not all.
but I mean,
But some are. The fact of the matter is, I think that's the idea.
and I wonder if that to me, if that money cannot be spent.
But the coaches' salaries, for example, the NCAA, is a clear picture that universities that want to spend money on sports program already are.
Yeah.
So if you're paying coaches, paying building companies that actually will build stadiums, those are the ways to attract athletes when you cannot pay them a salary.
Yeah.
So universities that want to spend on a sports program already are, but they're not paying the athletes that create the business. They're paying someone else. So they're giving the money not to young men that create the market. No, they pay to the coaches. They pay to the building corporation. They pay to the business. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I struggle with this idea of paying the athletes. I mean, and I struggle with the idea that this discussion should be whether or not the NCAA should be amateur or professional. As far as I'm concerned, personally, there's a professional league and there's a professional level that's already established. The NCAA, it's in the name. It's a school league that has happened to be a phenomenon, right? That's what happened. However, the NCAA is amateur, and I think that it should not blur into the professional level. I mean, I understand the talent and the amount of work going into this, I guess. Well, it's really an industry. But I don't know. I struggle with the idea that NCAA should be even considered professional. I understand that there's a percentage of these players that go on to play professional league, and that's all and well for them. But I don't know. I can see it to be fair that they be compensated in terms of having their tuition paid. I mean, if you're performing well, kids who aren't playing any sports who perform very well get scholarships based on that, right? Academically. And that's fair. That's great. So I think that maybe something has to be worked out so that they're compensated fairly in terms of tuition, in terms of, I think that a moderate living stipend would be sufficient, because if you think about it, we talked about the hours that these athletes put in. It's a job, right? But it's not on the professional athlete level. I mean, it's not on that, I don't like. I struggle with that so much, and I can see both point of views, but I think there's a distinct line between NCAA and college level sports and professional level. I can't see it blurring, and I know that maybe some people want for our discussion to go that way, but I cannot see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it's like, to be a student athlete, it's not something that everyone gets to do, so it's kind of like a privilege for them, and especially in the NCAA, like where they do get that exposure. Like, I mean, you can't get that anywhere else. So, like, yeah, I think that they should be compensated fairly and treated like not like slaves or whatever has been said, but at the same time, like, they aren't professional, and like I think it should stay that way.
Yeah, but I totally agree. I think you do that.
There's a gap between what you're suggesting and the amount of revenues NCAA has.
I see that.
That's the issue here.
But let's not forget that the NCAA is a not-for-profit organization.
Okay, so
like, those revenues, like, I mean, if you take them away and you give them to someone else, then like maybe the women's sports will suffer. And they're not allowed to do that because of Title IX, right? So it's not, I don't know if it's like the revenue.
It balances it out. Like, there's, again, Megan, you said it. It's a not-for-profit organization. They use the money for other things. And yeah, you know, sometimes it doesn't, you don't really see where it goes and things like that. But it's there for a reason. That's why they created this corporation. That's why they created this organization, was to govern over this type of sporting league. Right.
And I think in saying all that also, the other gap that we kind of touched on is that the coaches are getting paid, some coaches are getting paid millions. I mean, I understand that their job is super important, but I mean, to pay the coaches millions and to not pay the players anything is a huge gap that needs to be addressed. People are going to hate me for saying that, especially the $1 million coaches, but the truth is the truth. And I mean, if they're not professional, which they aren't, then maybe they should kind of take another look at. And I understand
one of the things that you can look at too is that, okay, the coaches are getting paid these $1 million contracts in some cases, but the teachers aren't getting that. Mm-hmm. I don't hear any teachers, anything like that of teachers being given $1 million contracts to teach at schools.
But there's a clear difference. The coaches now, like, most of their jobs is not to coach necessarily; it's to attract talent.
Yeah,
they're using as the cornerstone of their speech to the high school recruits. Hey, come to Duke. We have Team USA's coaching here. Yeah. Don't you want to learn from the best? Don't you want to be the best?
Yeah.
We have Coach K here to guarantee that.
Yeah.
No, he's a tool. It's a tool used to actually get top talent. Teachers are not used for that.
Exactly.
So that's why they get the millions.
They are. It's not like they're getting paid nothing.
But
I'm sure you guys have heard of Sunshine List, which is for Ontario, and you can see the amount of money that they're being paid. I'm not saying they're being paid nearly as much as coaches. I think it's wrong to be paying that much for a coaching staff or for one individual coach. But it's not like they're not being paid well. And if you're well known, if like in the English departments at some places, if you're a well-known author, you're getting paid much, much more and saying, oh, hey, I have this person. He could be your professor. I have this lawyer. He could be part of, your whatever degree. It's not, they do use these tools as well. And they have the ability to use those because you're right. Some of them are attracted to Harvard. Some of them are attracted to Yale or to UCLA or to Duke or whatever the case is. It's not that they don't use them. And it's not that they don't get much more of a salary than some other places either.
Yeah, but those students that are attracted by said professors and teachers help less in the notoriety of the university than the athletes that actually highlight the names during tournaments, because exposure and media for the NCAA tournaments are higher than, I don't know, for graduates from English degrees.
A graduate with a reference from a high-end English professor or a well-known author or whatever they are can get them a very good job very quickly.
But I think
Yep.
I think we're looking at two different individuals then when it comes down to that. I think like what Javier is talking about is, you know, an athlete with more notoriety coming into university who has a clear opportunity at playing professionals. Where I would argue that those students, in particular in basketball, aren't necessarily looking at going to a university because they have an excellent English teacher. They're looking at the opportunity for them to play 1 year basketball and then go on to the pros, and what team is or what university is going to give them that opportunity. So they're looking at those types of individuals, and that's where, you know, if I get, you know, 5-star prospect to come into my school, who's he more likely going to, you know, pick?
And let's not forget the fact that some of these top prospects come from the media, like come from already with a high exposure, since like high school students and high school prospects already have media on top of them. Like they already have covers of magazines and stuff like that.
And
so that's a business for the university as well.
Yeah.
That's an additional exposure.
So that's why obviously that the coaches are going to get paid more money. But again, it comes back to that the amateur versus professional debate, and I guess is it fair that that's what it's become?
And now, with that being said, since we're still discussing about how NCAA should not be professional because it's an amateur organization, for that to survive, wouldn't for example, in the basketball scenario, the NBA would have to help with that? Like, right now in NBA, there's a limit, an age limit, a minimum age to actually be drafted.
Yeah.
That allows players and forces players to play at least 1 year in college. That's why you have the one and done rule.
Yeah.
Whereas if students will be able to choose between earning money in the NBA or earning an education in college, they will have a more clear and fair options in life instead of being forced to play 1 year in college when they don't want to.
Yeah.
So do you think that to keep the amateur label on the NCAA, will the NBA have to commit to a no limit age rule in the draft?
Yeah, you see certain situations like that. Like I know the NHL has, like, you have the choice. Like there's two clear options that you could choose. You could choose the professional route, and you could go play in the CHL, or you could go play in the NCAA. Like there's two clear routes. In basketball, you can go to the NCAA and play that 1 year, and then go to professionals. You could go to Europe. You could play your full 4 years, or how many years you want to play. In the NFL, there's one choice. You can go play 3 years or 4 years, or how many years you want to go to school up until your eligibility, which is, I think it's 5 in the NCAA, I'm pretty sure, as well.
4.
4 in the NCAA?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you have 4 years. So there's different situations for different sports, but I mean, when you look at the professional leagues, I don't know. I find it difficult to because I think when you look at, if we take the NBA in particular, like the issue that's come up with that is that it's unfair to put, you know, these 18-year-old kids in that situation, in that environment where yes, there's the rare prospects that turn out and end up doing well, but for every prospect like that, there's, you know, multitudes of athletes that don't get that opportunity, and they don't get the education that comes along with it. So,
but those athletes that don't pan out, in quotations, they still receive their rookie contract that it's guaranteed money. So in a worst case scenario, they already have something to build on and pay their own education if they choose to. That's the point. Like, if they decide to earn money, why should they be keeping and risking that future earnings? Because if they get injured in university, it's done.
Yeah.
You know, so there's not gonna. I'm assuming some of the partial, like the scholarship, is not guaranteed 4 years or 3 years for the degree.
No,
That has actually special clauses, right? So it's a risk that they take and that they should not be taken. And right now I forgot the name of an athlete that had that his mother was really sick and he didn't have money for the treatment, and he was forced to actually wait a year and see his mother really sick without treatment until he was able to earn money, because he was a basketball player and he was in university and he couldn't that. So that's just one example, and I don't even remember the name right now. But those scenarios happen, and how is that fair?
Yeah, it's difficult because when there's two clear sides to it, and I mean, if you look at it from the athlete's perspective, and you know, it is unfair that, you know, you're putting in all this time and commitment, and you're seeing these organizations make, you know, ridiculous amounts of money off of you in particular, and you're seeing no benefit from it. And I know that they say that they get a scholarship, and they get, some schools give you other perks and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem like it's enough for what they're doing for these schools.
So what's enough?
That's something that only a free market could tell you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, once you free up of the rules and salaries, everything just comes together. Of course, it's a huge change, and a lot of things will change. But like in the 90s, for example, when the players wanted free agency in baseball, people kept saying that will be the end of professional baseball. That wasn't the case. And those kind of changes are seemed like evil from the people that are going to be affected, but it might actually help in the long term. Baseball right now is an organization, MLB, that earns $8 billion a year. Those things happen, and sometimes they need to happen in order to actually make the better league, make a better business, make a better organization.
So the only thing that I have a tough time wrapping my head around when it comes to like paying athletes is that, okay, the NCAA makes it, you know, okay to pay athletes. How much are they getting? Who's getting this? Is it like, you know, is it weighed differently? Is it, okay, you know, you're a football player, you get more money than a lacrosse player or a rower or something like that because you're bringing in more money? Is that? But
that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of the free market. The market would settle it. So, for example, for a university, it's more beneficial. It's more beneficial to actually build a team of just football players, and not ignore, but have less of a priority for different teams. They were gonna end up doing it, but you know that actually money doesn't guarantee success, as the New York Yankees and the New York Knicks will tell you, and even the Lakers sometimes. The point being is that this improves the product because it distributes talent way better. And just while we're talking about money, if the university's income it's as low as stated publicly, that means that the rates for the players will not be that high, because if there's not a nuclear weapon bidding race for talent, since universities doesn't have that kind of income to actually pursue that means that it's not like the market is going to explode.
No.
It's just going to be distributed differently. And again, universities that want to expand in sport programs are already doing it.
Yeah, like so that's the thing to me when I think about it, is that, you know, I don't see it changing much from the way it is now. It's just the athletes are going to get paid more, and resources will be distributed differently.
Yeah.
There's one little thing that you guys are kind of forgetting. and that's all the other sports besides football and basketball.
But that's the thing to me that's what I struggle with when I'm trying to think about it.
If you have a free market, guess what? Nobody's gonna go watch female any sport, as we clearly have researched and we have knowledge about. It's not as popular. Rowing is not as popular. There are things that are not as popular. So what happens in a free market situation when none of those teams can actually get enough money to make sure that they continue to have a team, or pay for the facilities, or pay for any of the costs of recruiting and all of that stuff? It's gone. This model may work well for basketball and football, but guess what? There are tons of other sports that the NCAA governs over, and again, I go back to, there's a reason why it's in place, because if you did this, then you would only have 2 sports in all of these universities.
And that's what I was getting at, is that I don't understand how it would work if you start paying athletes, because clearly there would be 2 sports. Maybe in some universities, maybe hockey and baseball are more important as well. But that's the thing. Like, what happens to these other sports? What happens to women's sport? You made a really good point about that as well. Like, how do you govern that in a way?
Well, you make it a progress, like a progressive change or whatever. So the point being is that, okay, you leave a reserve for the Title IX to work. You make a differentiation, but you actually start changing stuff. But
okay, how is it fair, Javier, that a football player or a football team gets paid money to play for a university, and as you say, you need to have certain regulations to make sure that there are female teams and so forth, that most of the time the university is not going to pay out of pocket for them to play. So again, we go back to equality and all of this shit. How is that going to work out again in a free market?
But in a free market,
you're not going to have it. It is impossible in this day and age to have a free market in this type of sporting atmosphere.
You have to make tough decisions and consider that the university has to create a budget and see what fits for them. And if the exposure of having a diverse varsity teams in different diverse sports, cool, they're gonna keep doing it. If universities decide that they need to focus on a specific sports to survive, or they wanna make their cry to the media that we specialize on one thing and we do one thing great, well, maybe they will keep doing that. So in the free market,
but they can't do one thing great. If they say that football is our team, that is what we're going to do, Title IX, you need to have other female sports.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You can't have one.
Sure, you don't eliminate the team. You just don't make the resources available as easy or as much as you used to do it.
But that still goes against the equality that's part of Title IX. They need to be able to have the certain facilities and certain availability of everything as well. It's not that cut and dry. It's much more, there's a lot of other factors involved in that, and it's just not the way I'm looking at it. You're not going to be able to do it.
Sure, and in those factors, it's included the availability of salaries for the players.
Well, if you're going to pay the boys, I'm assuming you're going to have to pay the girls.
You don't include that
There's
cost.
There's going to be a huge uproar if that comes up. I can tell you that right now.
But it's like what happens in professional sports. In professional sports, you have men leagues supporting women leagues, like female leagues. What I mean.
But okay, that's a marketing strategy, and it's one whole league and one team right now in North America that's getting that. That is just a brand new thing. You can't say that that's going to happen at the university level.
But I think like if that happened, would you stop seeing scholarships being given out to these players? Like, would you start seeing less scholarships being given out to, say, football athletes and them being get paid so that the scholarships could be distributed elsewhere? Like,
But where are they going to get that scholarship money if the NCAA, they don't get that money anymore?
But if you create a free market, you will make, and from the point I'm seeing it, is that you actually relax the rules about media and sponsorship, right? Definitely have to. And that would allow different stream of income for the players and even for the teams. And don't forget that by creating this salary structure, you will be allowing players to actually form unions and that kind of stuff, so actually can distribute and help different players that are not allowing these resources.
This is too much for college sports.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's that.
It's super easy.
This is enough for professional leagues, professional level, but this is too much for the college level. If it goes into a free market, it is dangerous, and it's going to be good for, like Cynthia said, for
The top elite
yeah.
percentage, which is not the same as that triangle of
The fact of the
elites,
matter
whatever.
is that I think that the NCAA was. It provides opportunity for people to play sports while they go to university. There is what is the percentage that goes into professional? It
It's
can't be
low.
that high.
It's really
So
low.
to cater
really
to a small percentage of people who are going to go on and make a ridiculous amount of money anyway.
Not all of them.
But no, to that
That's
wait.
not own stupidity or whatever the case is.
No,
if they
I'm-
can't make it in the big leagues, then they're not going to make it that great in the NCAA.
See, and if
either.
they
Like,
don't
it's
make it to the
not-
big leagues, then they have a friggin' degree
they're like the
that
rest
they
of
can
us.
fall back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for being normal. But
Well,
no,
what
I
is
think
the
it's
average?
unfair to cater
Yeah.
to a small percentage who are going to most likely go on and make millions and millions of dollars anyway. And yes, it's a small percentage, but I mean, for everyone else, it's unfair.
But that
It's-
small percentage is the one that is making all this money.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to make a comment about the marketing, I guess, of the NCAA, because these players, the changeover from year to year, of the good players or whatever, is it changes every year, so they can't high turnover. Thank you. So this player didn't create the market that they're playing in. They didn't create this attention. It was created a long time ago by the NCAA. So they were lucky enough to be put into that spotlight because of the NCAA, who recruited them to come there, right? So I don't think that it's necessary. Yes, it's their face and stuff, but they weren't the ones who started it. So I can't see why you would.
I'm going to throw
Maybe
this
next
back at
time.
you. Sorry, Megan. But Javier, you said that, this whole 1 year rule thing. Well, okay, great. They're there for 1 year and then they're gone. This is exactly what Megan's saying.
See, yeah, but they're gone. Remember in the 80s and in the 90s, for example, basketball players play in college for more than 1 year. Why? Because what their earnings they were kept from making weren't that high as they are right now. So if you make an equal or a similar option to earn money in college as you will be in professional basketball, you will be keeping them in the league for more than 1 year.
But at the end of the day, the people who are going to make it to the professional leagues, they're going to make it. So, they're going to get that paycheck. So
Unless they're terribly unlucky.
yeah, but then they have a backup plan because then they're playing, then they're getting an education.
Not necessarily, but because what if they get injured before?
So what
they
about the
finish
people who
degree?
get injured in high school then? Are you gonna pay them because they had the
They are
potential
not
to make
making.
it?
They are not making millions of dollars.
No, but
millions of dollars for
Yeah,
an
but you just
organization.
said that they're
But-
getting known in high school. They're on front
Exactly.
pages of
So-
articles.
Yeah,
They're doing
but
this. They
the-
have their own sponsorships.
If they get
You
injured
said
in
that to us.
They have no. I said they are media and they have a face and they're popular because of that. We're gonna do in the future, yeah. But most of them are not making money. Most of them they don't have money.
But what if they have
Come
a
on,
career-ending
if you're on the face
injury,
of
like a concussion?
Sports Illustrated or whatever the case is, they're not going to get money for doing that kind of stuff. If somebody is sponsored by Nike at that young of an age, you really don't think that they're going to be to be sponsored, you're getting something in return. Like, it's not just oh yes, I will help you, Nike. I will sit here
I'm gonna
and
volunteer
look so
my
good
time.
for you,
Yeah.
and that's it. I'm not getting anything in return, and I am a-okay with that.
I
Really?
would be okay with
Who's
that.
gonna do that
If I get
nowadays?
free Nike stuff, I'd be down for that.
But
just
then
saying.
you get something.
Yeah.
That's true. But I think for me too is that's what you're seeing sport become now is it's becoming professional. Like even at the lower levels, it's becoming professional, and it's just becoming an inevitability that, you know, if we start paying college athletes, well then the question's going to come down to, you know, should high school athletes start to get paid for their work?
I think the line is drawn, and I think it's drawn well.
Yep.
Yeah, but if that comes to it, you're thinking about going backwards, like to high school, and whether you pay high school athletes. Maybe the solution is going upwards and change rules in the NBA. That would make easier to survive the NCAA.
Yeah.
Because the athletes will be the one with the choice of getting paid or not, instead of having someone else choosing for them, right? So yeah, that.
But like, I mean, if you look at the football model where the age requirement is higher, or it's you're required to complete at least 3 years of an undergrad degree. I believe that's what it is before you can play in the professional leagues. Like, what if it became put on the other leagues to follow suit with that?
Then you will definitely have a problem.
Why? How so?
In basketball specifically, you will have a problem. Because you will be playing 3 years of not earning money. You will increase the amount of players that go to the NBDL. There will be more players going to China, more players going to Europe because they need a paycheck.
Yeah. But that's then it becomes their choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you will be affecting the product, the NCAA product and the NBA product. Both products will be affected.
As a student, though, like everyone goes to school, and I mean, like, we don't work, so we have to figure it out too. And we don't have the benefit. Not all the time. Not everyone does. Like, we have the benefit of the scholarship that they do. Like, we have to pay full tuition, whatever. Some people get academic scholarships, some people don't. So, yeah. I just don't think that makes sense.
Well, with everything discussed today, we have a clear thing, a clear subject that need to be either further researched or further discussed. Hopefully, we can get the attention of people that can actually have decision power and think about this. In the long term, I want to thank you for all my colleagues here for the great discussion we had today. Thank you, Cynthia, for being on the phone with us.
No problem.
Thank you for listening. This has been Sports Rec Nation once more.